and welcome to another episode of the Sip and Grow with Wiki podcast. As you know, on this podcast, we talk about all things sobriety, inspiration, personal, and professional growth. And today I have with me Mr. Tope Abulude. Interesting question I'd like to ask him is about his name. I find the surname quite interesting. What does that mean?
It's Abulude. It means someone who comes with the entrance of drums. So it's, celebratory. Abulude. So Ilu, Abulu.
Well, for those
drums.
who don't speak Yoruba, Ilu is drums. Abulude.
Yes.
So like entrance of celebration.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming. I know it's been an interesting journey to get here, but honestly, I really appreciate your support and the sacrifice to be here today because you're a very busy man, I know. Tell us a bit more about what you do in sort of like the deco world. I know you've trained a lot of people, but I want the guests to hear or our audience to hear more about what you do.
Okay. Started about 30 years ago now. And my background...
Some of us were not even born.
My background is architecture. I've got a master's degree in architecture. And that's where the design, aspect of what I do comes from. I then had a roommate in my university days who was already... doing things like that, and he just invited me along, and the rest is history. We just did the first wedding. We earned a lot of money, and
was that here in the UK, or did you start?
No, it was
from
Nigeria. I attended University of Lagos.
Oh wow!
Yeah, in Nigeria. So started then, but then when I came to this country, I found balloons. I remember, I think I came, the first wedding I attended. Was 2 weeks after I arrived to live in the UK, and just literally went to a wedding, and I saw these balloon decorations, and I thought, actually, I fancy a bit of that myself. And just started really.
Okay, interesting. One thing, I'd say, I'd probably think it's an edge that you have is presumably the background in architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my younger self, true story, fact.
Go on, tell us.
When I wanted to go to university in Nigeria, my first JAMB, for those who don't know what JAMB is the exam that you write in Nigeria to go to university. And of course, if you pass and you meet the cutoff, you get an admission. If you don't, you simply write the exam again. So the university I wanted to go to at the time was Futmina, and that was because I had my siblings that were already there, and my choice of what I wanted to study was architecture.
Oh.
And why did I think architecture? So backstory to secondary school, I was the best student in technical drawing in my school.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? People say do what you're good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, what can I do with this technical drawing, right? And I was like, okay, maybe something relating or something having to do with drawings.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and I get architecture. And at the time, anyway, I think within my family, we kind of had most people doing things in the building field.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a brother that's an architect. That was studying for architecture at the time. My sister was studying quantity survey.
Oh.
My dad was practicing as a quantity surveyor, but doesn't practice anymore or hasn't even practiced for many years. So it kind of just felt natural because everyone was kind of going towards engineering,
in the building industry,
sort of. So I thought, okay, this would be a nice thing to do. I think I understand instrumental drawings.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I felt I wasn't so good at was freehand sketches.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, I can't be a freehand sketch type of artist, but at least I could understand, an instrumental drawing. So that was why I chose architecture. So it wasn't like I had this grand plan of, or even inspiration from like female architects or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a simple reason. And fast forward, did the JAMB. I didn't meet the cutoff, so I couldn't do architecture.
Okay.
The option was to wait the second year to do the JAMB exam again. That didn't happen, and along the line, I then ended up going to University of Ilorin, which did not have architecture at the time. So I was like, okay, what else can I do? And I ended up in civil engineering. So I feel like a lot of the decisions in my life weren't the most intentional, but I ended up doing civil engineering. But I still think or consider myself as creative. You can argue that, but that's what I think. And I think that's giving you an edge, like the background in architecture, because the truth is what you do, I've seen a lot of your designs creative. You can tell that this person is passionate. They're also very creative. So how would you say, you've been able to, I guess, leverage on your background in what you do now in the decor industry?
It's interesting you say that, and yes, I agree, absolutely with you. There's a big difference between anyone who has a background in design. You study the principles and the elements, and you have a better understanding of design, why things work. You could walk into a room and just look around and know why these colors don't suit, and it may be something as simple as the sizes you've used them in, the gradients of how you use the colors, so really there is a segment even when I teach balloon artistry now, where we teach them the principles and elements of design, but it's never enough. I mean, I've got a master's, and every year you bring that to bear. So for me, it's second nature. I can look at stuff and know what I need to put where to just take it from good to great.
Wow, interesting. Do you have to sketch out every single, I guess, design event?
Not really. To be fair, I work a lot intuitively. So if it's a big project, I may sketch, but if it's a small project, I've learned to rely on my intuition to
you got it in you, why not? So that's the competitive edge, because at the end of the day, like they say, no one can be like you, so you might as well use what you have.
Absolutely.
To your advantage.
Yeah.
So I know that you are a trauma response.
That was a big jump from design to my other hat.
Trauma response counselor, or what do you call it? Yeah. Psychologist.
Yeah, trauma-informed counselor.
Yeah,
I think that's trauma-informed. Yes.
I said response.
Yeah.
Trauma-informed counselor.
Yeah.
I think for me, probably because I had the response in my head, it's like, okay, how do you respond to trauma? How do you So how did you go from, and I know you still work in the design world, how did you navigate your way into being a counselor and obviously helping people get their lives together?
Okay, that's a that's a totally different journey, but happy to share. I think a counselor, I think about it for me personally. I don't know about anyone else. For me, it's a calling, and it's a way of being for me. And even from when I was quite young, I was a go-to person for how that is within your friendship group. Yes, my friends would come to me, and that's how. And people call me the soul of discretion, which lends itself to confidentiality. Because I don't gossip past people's stuff on. So
at least they could trust you.
Yes, and that's things like that. So I think as I then grew up, I started to think, okay, so what how do you help? Because it's one thing being able to listen, it's another thing having the information and being able to point people in the right direction. So I went to, I think my first foray into proper education, because I'm a great believer in education. Whatever it is you want to do, I want to know how it's been done in the past. I want to get the education that matters. And then you can sort of go on from there. So I thought I'll go do a taster course did a taster course in counseling and psychotherapy, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's quite a journey for myself as well.
But in plain terms, what is trauma-informed counseling? Because
Okay.
if we look at, for example, obviously nowadays there's different types of counselors, psychologists that might specialize in maybe marriage relationships. Some people might specialize in like bringing up children. And when I read your bio, I was like, trauma-informed?
Okay.
This is different. What makes it different?
Well, trauma is really about the things that happened in your childhood and how it reflects on you as an adult. So, connecting the dots. So, trauma-informed means a counselor understands about trauma. It's a model, like every other model. I'm an integrative counselor, which basically means I use different modules with the work that I do. So if I working with a client and I recognize trauma, I would explore that. Things like people take some of these things for granted. So, example, procrastination. You laugh. Am I hitting a nerve? So yeah, people live with it for years and years.
I live with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe I need to be having a session.
It may be interesting to explore it. Some people just think it's laziness. It really isn't laziness. It really isn't laziness. And
I don't think it's laziness for me. I think it's just trying to do the quickest thing I can do now. And sometimes that might mean that
I'm thinking we're about to have a session here.
Important. Well, I'll be honored to get that help. And that sort of feeling that, okay, let me get this done quickly, right? But then sometimes I end up leaving the important things undone. And then before you know, it's 1 week. And that thing is not done because I'm putting it off. And I remember...
So why are you putting it off?
I read, and even from the name of the book, Eat That Frog. It's like, okay, do the hardest thing. Do the most...
Absolutely, yeah.
First. But sometimes I just struggle. Sometimes I do it. Particularly if there's a deadline, if there's a consequence, I will push myself to do it. But if it feels like, well, there's no immediate consequence, and I'm like, you know what, there's so many things on my to-do list. Let me tick off all the things.
The easy ones. So you start with the easy ones, yeah. And it makes your brain...
And to be honest, it doesn't feel like... And I get in my mind, okay, eat that frog, like do the hard thing first. But I can't get myself to do it sometimes.
Okay. So well, it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And it's probably a coping mechanism you developed when you were quite young. Now, while it served you at that point in your life, it doesn't necessarily serve you as a grown-up.
No, it doesn't.
So what you need to do is do something.
And sometimes I've had to deal with the consequences, with the negative outcome.
Yes, you need to then, do some internal work, And once you've then have some new coping mechanisms, you try and stay consistent with those. So it's a lot more work than me just saying it like that.
Yeah.
But when you recognize it as a coping mechanism, something that worked for you when you were 4 years old, when you were 6 years old, what we tend to forget is ever so often in our lives we need to recalibrate. We need to, I don't know what the computer term is, defrag or update our software, hardware, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm not computer. I'm not that way inclined. I'm an artist. That's my that's my excuse for not. Yeah, that's my superpower. So I tend to ask people to ever so often, take a minute, look at their lives, and check those coping mechanisms that are no longer relevant, and in that way you would update.
Wow. I think that sort of moves me to the next question around addiction, right? Because some of these behaviors, because you've lived with them for so long, they become almost addictive. And I was listening to a podcast, and now I don't remember who was speaking on the podcast, but anyway, one of the things I took away from it is a lot of times people, when you use the word addiction, people see it as, oh, you're a druggie or you're like the extremes, right? And we don't actually recognize in our simple everyday lives those things that we're doing, that we're addicted to, and they're not even serving us.
Yeah.
Probably when they don't have dire consequences, right? So in your experience, in terms of how you've helped your clients in the past, how have you been able to help them? Because if they've had certain traumas in their lives growing up, they're used to that way of thinking, they're used to that way of living. And then they've developed coping mechanisms like I have to deal with those challenges. And they're addicted to those coping mechanisms. How have you been able to help them to then break off those addictions, hopefully to be able to pick up, I don't know, a better pattern of behavior?
Okay. Well, if it's something like alcohol, then, you know, the best people who are specialized to do that, AA, you know, and so that's the direction I will point someone who's, very deep into alcohol addiction. There are other addictions like sex. Can I say that on your podcast? Yeah. So, sex, and so sometimes it's your phone. You're addicted to your phone.
That's a big one
Yeah.
in this current age.
Yes,
like
it is.
Phone addictions.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I feel sometimes I am addicted to my phone because like I need to check something or I need to,
And before you know it, you need to check something which would take you like 2 minutes to do. Before you know it, 2 hours later,
you're
still on it, And again, it's easier to help someone who's already recognized they have an issue, a problem with that. You can then, again, you may find that it is trauma related, some form of escapism from the lives that they have. And so even working with someone who has an addiction and trying to break it immediately may not necessarily be the most helpful way to go. First you need to ground the person, before you start to unveil what the trauma might be. And so in that way, what I do is talk therapy. It's not something that's going to go in 10 sessions, especially if it's trauma related. I work with some clients for 2 years.
Wow.
Consistently, because most things in life, if you're consistent with it, again, sometimes it's about developing a new habit.
Yeah.
So it's not, I encourage people, it's not about, I need to get rid of that, because that then the negative thing becomes the focus, and it just looms bigger and bigger, whereas you can actually focus on developing different habits
to replace.
To replace what you're trying to get rid of.
Yeah. I think for me, I tend to go cold turkey.
Okay.
If I want, because I feel
that works for you.
And again, maybe it's willpower or whatever, but I feel that what's that thing in I'm trying a Yoruba adage came to mind now.
Can you remember it in Yoruba? Yeah.
I'll say it in Yoruba, and I'll try my best, or maybe I'll ask you to interpret it properly.
Assuming.
Yoruba adage came to mind, which is what.
Say it in Yoruba. Go on.
What did I say? What? What you will not, you should not feel rumu. Like what you're not going to eat.
Yeah.
Don't bring it. So if you're not going to eat something, don't bring it close to your nose.
Yeah.
And for me, it just means that, like, don't with a long stick try and play with something when you feel like this is your weak point.
Basically, don't dance with the devil.
Exactly.
In a sense, yeah.
And for me, for example, maybe with social media, right? Mm-hmm. And even till now, on my main phone, where I speak to everyone, I actually don't have Instagram on that phone. It's deleted, like it doesn't exist. And that's the phone I use the most. That's the phone that has like my personal number, that has everything. But I deleted Instagram on that phone. Why? Okay, yes, I have Instagram. Yes, I have to post on my business page. I post more on my business page than I do on the personal page. But if I go there to post and I have this phone all the time with me, I'm more likely going to post, do other things, play around on Instagram, and then before you know this, I've spent so much time on it. Now, what I did was, and again, this was maybe some form of response to my trauma, was I got a separate phone that has my business line on it, and that phone has Instagram. So when I'm picking up that phone, I know that I'm checking the WhatsApp for business on that phone, right? To see if there's a client, I'm checking, do I have any missed calls? I'm checking that phone from a business mindset. And if I need to post on Instagram, I'm posting on the business phone, business Instagram page from that phone. And I found it's been helpful, to be honest.
You see, what you're doing, Buki, is...
It doesn't mean I don't still pick up that phone
No.
And
what you're doing
waste my time on
you're
it.
doing your own therapy. You laugh, but, you've got the presence of mind to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. And that's, what I teach a lot in my sessions is self-awareness. When you know who you are, it's easier. Because then I have a tendency to do this. So what you do is put things in place to make sure that, to keep yourself safe. To keep yourself safe. And again, one of the other things I teach is boundaries. But you cannot have boundaries, with other people if you don't create boundaries for yourself. So you've got these internal boundaries and you're doing the work. A lot of people don't do the work and you just feel like things are going to happen. No, you're doing the work and you're seeing the results. Yes. Are you going to be perfect? No. And it's not about perfection. It's not about perfection.
That's
it's about
one of my favorite quotes, progress, not perfection.
Yes, absolutely.
I consider myself sometimes to try to do things perfectly. And I've felt that sometimes it's been restrictive. So I keep bringing it back in my head, progress, not perfection. Like make progress.
Make progress, yeah. Take baby steps, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Now, on the subject of alcohol.
Yes.
What is your relationship with alcohol?
None. I think is the simple answer to that. But I do have a story. It's really... Yes, it's an anecdote. It's really, really interesting. I don't drink,
Okay. It's a rare one.
But yes, by choice, Okay. But, I got invited to come and teach in Russia once upon a time. And if you're going to drink alcohol, Russia is not the place to do it, So, I mean, the vodka is, supposedly higher in percentages and stuff like that. So I was having, interestingly, I was watching an episode of a series, and I remember, I'm not gonna name it, put names on it, but what happened was someone was sad and they recommended a drink to him. It was Long Island tea. And he said it was sweet. I don't like bitter things. Maybe that's why I never got into beer and spirits. I just it's not a thing for me. So I went to in St. Petersburg, I think. Yeah, St. Petersburg. And so my host, just said, "Oh, let's have some drinks before going to dinner." I've been working all day, no food. So I have absolutely no idea on how you're supposed to drink or not drink. First thing is, don't drink alcohol on an empty stomach. I didn't know this, So we went downstairs. We had. So I when I saw Long Island tea on the drinks menu, I thought, oh, I know this one. Again, non-drinker.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, okay. They said it's sweet, so So I ordered that. Apparently it's made with, I don't know how many types of alcohol. It's quite a few different types. And so when the drink came, I tasted it and I thought, oh, this is nice. And then the host came around and said, oh, we had the table reserved for this time. Let's go. So what did I do? I grabbed my drink and downed it. Again, you don't
empty
do
stomach
that.
as well,
You
yeah.
don't, yeah, you don't do that. I don't know. I didn't know. I
Yeah.
never got the memo because I don't drink. So I downed the drink. And I kid you
And
not,
the
I
name of tea is
think
deceptive. Like when you kind of feel like, oh, it's just.
it's tea, isn't it? Long Island tea, and it's sweet,
Yeah.
So down the drink, I kid you not, I sort of probably about 10 meters and my knee started to knock, It was like an out of body experience because I was getting quite giggly and warm, and luckily I was in company of friends, So everyone found it funny. We laughed about it and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my relationship. That's as much.
Was that like, you know what, after this experience, no more, and then do you consciously just, I guess, avoid, or are you that one person that everyone knows to be the designated driver?
I will be the designated driver. It was never a thing. Never, got attracted to it as a result of, so yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think in the Western world, I think alcohol is obviously it's seen as, something to celebrate with,
break social barriers.
Social barriers. And if you're in a company of friends and you're not drinking, it feels like you're different.
An outcast, maybe. Yeah.
I think for me personally, I've never really had a relationship with alcohol. So maybe, and that's why sometimes I'm kind of, like I try to understand other people's views, as much as I can, because I've never drank. And fast forward when I came to the UK, and then obviously I might go out with colleagues at work and things, and we go for maybe drinks after work and all of that. The tradition was to just get drunk, right? And I had to say to myself, like, oh, if I haven't done this thing all these years,
why am I going to start now?
Why would I start now? And I also feel that sometimes maybe I think, I have a bit of an addictive personality. So I'm like, you know what? The same principle of just
don't
stay
start.
clear.
Yeah, don't start. Yes.
Don't even start. And I think a lot of millennials now are
feel
going
the
in that
pressure.
direction.
Oh,
Some people are going in the direction whereby that sort of woke agenda of, okay, being vegan and all of those things, they're cutting down on alcohol. And I think the stats support that compared to like back in the day where smoking, drinking, all of these things went pretty much hand in hand. So I think my view is, obviously never use a substance to try and cope with anything, for sure. And if you feel that you're dependent on alcohol for any reason, just get help. Because what people are doing is, you have a problem with alcohol, but then you're either covering it, particularly women. A lot of women don't admit that they have alcohol problems.
Okay.
And I remember there was a lady, she has this page on Instagram, I think something around gray, whereby, when you have like this gray line, right? And for years, she never considered herself as an alcoholic because it would be, I just have a glass of wine after work with my dinner. And then from a glass of wine, she would finish a bottle until she went that rabbit hole. And, she didn't feel like she was drinking beer or like strong spirits. So she never considered herself. But then, and I think this is what you mentioned about being self-aware. She didn't realize that this thing is having an impact on other aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And then she then dedicated her life's goal supposedly to the gray area drinkers, like those who don't feel like they're addicts, but you're actually sleeping down that slope. Yeah. And you're not doing anything about it. And even from a health standpoint as well, there's all this impact. Anyway, I feel like I've gone on a rampage about alcohol. It's a topic that I'm
passionate about.
Interested in, passionate about, from the health standpoint, from, some people ask me why I don't drink, from the faith standpoint, there's just so many reasons why I don't drink. And I feel like, well, my mission is to try and promote alternatives, and again, when I say alternatives, I'm not just saying get yourself high on sugar. No, there's so many things you can drink out there. I like drinking drinks. Yeah. And I think that's probably what got me to where I am right now. Anyway, so I'll stop with my
no, it's it's fine.
My long rant, and The question I was going to ask you is, in your career as a counselor, as a balloon artist, what would you say has been your proudest moments, or I guess your proudest achievements? I know you don't like to blow your own trumpet, but there might just be one particular occasion or something that you've done that you're like, you know what, actually I touched the life here, or I did this and I felt very proud of myself.
Well, I'm gonna start with my personal life, which is, for me, I think in just one word, my family. My two words, my family. You know, I'm proud of my family. In my professional world, I have won a few awards earlier when I was
many
in my earlier days, you know, and then you became an instructor. So I think the awards, you know, when I look back and I thought, you know, the brazenness, if you like, the boldness to feel like I had something to contribute, you know, is something that I'm incredibly proud of. So yeah,
you've done some TV related, and you've done a lot of traveling. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Traveling, yeah.
For work.
I think
you seem you're definitely a man in high demand.
I think the one thing led to the other, and I remember how I came about doing my first competition, which was in America back then, Chicago, many years ago. So I just I entered a competition. I just saw, you know, I was going to attend the World Balloon, well, what was the World Balloon Convention then? It used to be called the International Balloon Arts Convention. It happened in America. So I thought, you know, this competition, you know, I'll enter it. And I came third, you know. And then I thought, okay, you know, it looks like they like my work. Yes,
now,
you know. Yeah. And then I came back to England, and I think about 2 weeks later, there was another competition in Birmingham. And I thought, yeah, if I could go do the world one, perhaps do the local one. I did just one category, and I came first in that one. Wow. I think, okay, so I started to attract attention that way, you know, sort of people looking at my work and wanting to see what I did. And so I was then asked to be an instructor for one of the big, you know, wholesalers in the industry, manufacturers in the industry. And so I jumped on that. And I have been to so many places around the world, Brazil, Taiwan, Thailand, Australia, America lots and lots of times, Africa a couple of, Nigeria, of course, and Kenya. So around Europe, to a lot of European countries to go and teach balloon artistry. So yeah, that's it's been a journey and an enjoyable one.
Yeah.
I love meeting people, interacting, you know, with people of different cultures. You mentioned about drinks earlier. We talked about drinks earlier. I thoroughly enjoy teas, you know, stuff. So,
what's your favorite tea? Just a bit of digression.
Goodness.
Don't say green tea, you know.
No, well, I actually like green tea.
Oh my God.
I do like green tea.
Who likes green tea?
Honestly, I think a friend of mine sent me some tea from Taiwan. I just told him I liked tea, and he just went to the most expensive tea store and bought me this really, what I can probably call gourmet tea. I don't know what it's called. It was all in Taiwanese, the names, but thoroughly enjoyed it. And I don't have it with sugar as well. So.
That's good. One question I've actually always wanted to ask you is, you have this interest, experience in design. Why did you choose balloon decor as like your niche?
Okay. I think
happen naturally, or?
No, I stumbled into it. I can't even, you know, take any credit for how it happened. You know, I said earlier, when I decorated my first wedding with my friends in Nigeria, all we used was fabrics and paper. You know, we just made stuff. Being architecture students, we could create anything we wanted to do. So we made stuff, and then like I said, the first 2 weeks, the first wedding I attended in England here in the UK, I saw a balloon arch, a spiral balloon arch, and it fascinated me, and I just thought, if I knew how to do this, I imagine I could do more with it.
Yeah.
So I went, and the first thing I always do with stuff like the same thing with counseling, I just go straight to education.
To educate yourself.
Yeah.
And how do you keep yourself, I guess, motivated through the journey of your I guess, career in both balloon artistry and counseling?
Curiosity. I'm always...
I think no one can give you that.
Yeah, I'm always pushing. So I go to... if I go to an event where 6 teachers have been invited to teach, I do my class and then I go and sit in on other classes, And it doesn't matter if sitting in on a 20-year-old's class, I would take something out of it, not to copy the work, but as an inspiration for, it may be a technique, it may be some way that I've focused on doing something, that's like, oh, I didn't think about doing it like that. And if it saves me an hour on the work I do, then,
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to admit, because I feel that if people sometimes are not humble enough, given what you've achieved in your career, you might, the typical, I guess, let me not say the typical.
Well, masters of today, the way I look at it, the masters of today, you need to then become students of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's how you grow.
I think it takes a level of even just personality, of humility, because in somewhere like Nigeria, sometimes you meet like business owners that have gone, far ahead. And sometimes when they get to that level where they feel like, oh, I have arrived, I'm successful, sometimes they're not able to learn. They're not open to it. And I think it's
you become obsolete and you go out of fashion, because things are
they might still be making
changing.
money, and sometimes they're not even bothered.
Well, it is possible, but then in the long run,
True.
eventually something will catch up with you or not catch up with you. It's like, I mean, we see that even with the really big corporations, don't we?
Yeah, true. And I think one thing I tend to say to myself, and I feel like I say a lot of things to myself, is to kind of like reset my mind, really.
See, you're your own therapist. That's what you're doing. You're taking it lightly, and you've been laughing every time I say that. But you've got an internal supervisor.
Yeah, and I say to myself, I'm teachable, and it's a confession I make. I have a teachable spirit. I am taught of a lot. I am teachable, because sometimes you can, particularly if you want to do certain things, you might be, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to achieve this. And you're just so focused on the goal that you're not willing to take a step back and listen or learn, And I find that, for me, it doesn't matter how, even with the drinks industry, like I'm willing to learn from anyone. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had. More recently, I had a bartending scholarship from a brand, a female owned brand. And I was grateful for what they were doing in terms of giving back to people to help them train, and the opportunity was more for, you're already working in the industry. So it's not like, okay, you don't know anything, but then to help you upskill within the industry. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I'm always looking for opportunities to learn, because there's so many things, one can learn to improve and evolve.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I'd say, what advice would you have to your 18-year-old self?
Oh,
knowing all you know now.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I think what I would tell my 18-year-old self is, be yourself. Be authentic.
I feel like that,
as much as you can. As much as you can. I would tell my 18-year-old self to be easy on myself and understand that what even might look to you like a weakness could actually be a strength, but only exposes itself when you're 35 or 50. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I was younger, I always thought, I could act, and I wanted to be
an actor.
I didn't see myself as, but I wanted to act through through my school. But guess what? I would never get the parts because my voice was not deep enough. So the male leads, the kings, we're giving to those deep voice people. Fast forward to when I got to my 40s, I found out every feedback given to me was that my voice is very therapeutic.
It is.
So God saw what God, everything God has given you, even if it appears to be a weakness, will eventually be used if you're compliant to His will for your life, really. Yeah. So now, when I'm, of course, as a therapist, we actually never got to. We never got to how I got into therapy pre-COVID and all of how that became quite big, really. It became really big for me. I started off not wanting to practice, and then you used the word earlier in this podcast about pivoting.
Pivoting, yeah.
And I took my my practice online, and I have a waiting list.
Supporting families and people through COVID, which was quite an interesting period.
Yeah, and I have a waiting list of to see people. It's absolutely gone crazy.
And I think thank you for that, because to your point, a lot of times we see the limitations, we see the things, and my belief again is all things work together for good. So some of those things, and there's some things I'm asking myself questions about. Why am I this way in this area? Why can't I achieve these things? But I also say, well, all things work together for good. So therefore, this thing, this strength, this weakness will hopefully align,
play out,
for the greater good. Essentially. And any final words of advice for our listeners?
I think we covered a lot today. I think I would just like to say to people, do the work. Try to be authentic. As much as, but find your authentic self, find your true self, because that's where you're going to be happy. So
I think that will probably take us to a whole new different episode, because it's like, how do you find your authentic self? How do you be yourself all the time in the world where we have to conform, or
we don't have to conform.
We don't have to.
Yes.
Maybe wrong word to use.
Yes.
Where it's maybe the society makes you feel like you need to do certain things or act a certain way. So thank you so much to our listeners, and as we wrap up, we are going to go through 10 rapid fun questions. Okay, so I'm going to ask you 10 questions, just one word questions, and then just to kind of like have a look and feel of what you like and what you don't like. So, passion or money?
Passion.
To be fair, I think it was quite obvious for you. Like, definitely, I 100% agree. Neutral or bold colors?
Neutrals.
Okay. Minimalism or maximalism?
Minimalism, definitely. My designs are very simple, but it's impactful. Yeah. It's the way I dress. It's the way it's...
Is that like, are you one of those people that have this minimalist wardrobes and home decor?
Well, a lot of that, it's you're married, so there has to be a balance for me anyway. So, but
tea or coffee? I think we
already covered that. It's tea all the way.
Undisputedly tea.
Yes.
Netflix and chill or going out?
Well,
maybe not Netflix.
Okay, yes. Do you know what I recently found out what that means, which then makes me a little bit okay.
Well, let's just take it from the face value.
Face value, chilling at home. Yes.
Watching the movie.
Yes.
And that.
Yes.
Or would you rather a night out?
No, I would be at home.
Okay. Summer or spring?
Summer, definitely.
Oh, was hoping you say spring.
No, summer all the way.
I think I'll say spring just because I feel like spring is not too
hot or too cold.
Yeah, it's just nice, and then you've got flowers and all of those things. Yeah. City or countryside?
Countryside.
I like city.
Mm.
I think if I could have a mix of both, it would be amazing. It would be ideal. But yeah,
Yeah.
might eat your cake and have it.
Yeah, countryside. For me.
Dreamer or realist?
I'm a realist. Yeah, I call, I don't suffer fools gladly, and I call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vacation or staycation?
Oh, vacation all the way.
And in terms of your flavor profile, sweet or sour?
Sweet and sour.
Oh. To be fair, I like both.
Yeah.
Because I consider myself a more sweet tooth, yeah. But I also like things that are sour.
Yeah.
Not bitter. I don't like bitter things. So I
Yeah.
like, lemon.
I think for me as well, it's about I think as a younger person, it will be sweet all the way. And that's probably why I never had beer, like I said to you. It was never a thing. If I tasted it, I just thought, no, not enough for me. But then as I got older and I realized sugar's not good, I'm a cold turkey person as well. I just like...
You don't do any
I don't
sugar?
do sugar, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is quite an achievement. I think I preach more low sugar as much as you can. Choosing the better alternative when you can.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway. So that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much once again for coming. And I hope our audience, you've been able to learn a thing or two. We'll put Mr. Tope's details on our socials when this video goes up. Follow him on Instagram and follow all the amazing things that he does. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, Buki.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Great.